Welcome back to World Drum Club, everyone. I'm Kalani Das, your host and teacher, and in this lesson, we're going to be looking at how to approach arranging a group of percussion instruments for accompanying a song, both within the context of only percussion and also considering how you would add some percussion instruments to a band that also has a drum set. First, we're going to look at the principles of arranging for percussion. So, like choosing any group of instruments to play music, one of the main things we want to consider are the individual properties or qualities of the instruments. One of the main categories is pitch. All the drums and percussion instruments exist in their own pitch range. Some instruments, like the cajon and the djembe and most drums, will have a little bit wider range because they have low sounds and high sounds. Most of the hand percussion instruments, like the tambourine, the shaker, cabasa, and triangle, will have relatively fixed pitch ranges. So with those, we have other considerations. With cajon and djembe, we want to consider what else in the music might be in the same pitch range, like bass guitar or keyboards, and we want to make sure that we're not adding too much of the same type of pitch into a song because we don't want those sounds to compete too much. We want to think about arranging vertically with some low sound, some medium sound, middle sound, upper and high sounds. A lot like a choir would have bass, baritone, or tenor, alto, and soprano voices. So the same principles apply with percussion. So in order to arrange effectively for percussion, one of the things you need to be able to do is be familiar with the ranges and sounds of each instrument. You already have lessons on each one of the instruments. You could review those and, of course, experiment and play the instruments for yourself and discover what sound properties are typical for each instrument. The cajon and the djembe both have low and high sounds. But even the high sounds on cajon and djembe are not as high as some of the metallic sounds in the hand percussion. So now let's look at how to choose a few instruments. Let's consider an arrangement where we have only hand percussion and we want to choose 4 instruments as a basic foundation for a song. What I would recommend is that you choose one of the drums, either cajon or djembe, because they both have similar qualities. Then that will provide the bass voice or simulate or emulate the role of the bass drum and possibly the snare drum of a drum set. Once we have that, we can move on and think about what might emulate the hi-hat ride cymbal role and other sounds that you would have in a rhythm section. So one of our most common and popular instruments is the tambourine. This, of course, is a metallic sound. It's fairly high-pitched. So we can have the tambourine as one of our sounds. That would maybe emulate also the snare drum or add to the snare roll or backbeat roll. From there, we might want to add in something that fills in a little more of the texture and is more like a constant hi-hat or ride cymbal roll. And we could do that with any of the 3 other instruments: triangle, cabasa, or shaker. Now we've got our foundation, and we've got something that's gluing everything together, holding everything together in a constant kind of motor action. But let's think about, from there, accenting. We talked about accents and transitions in the last lesson. So maybe we want to reserve the triangle for that. And instead of using the triangle for a beat or a rhythm, we could just add the triangle every once in a while. Or we could add a little roll at the beginning or ending of a certain rhythmic figure or section, just as a way to punctuate the music. The main concepts here are, one, pitch. So from low to high, something that will fill in the music and connect with the bass instruments, like the string bass or keyboard, connect with and accentuate the rhythm instruments, rhythm guitar, keyboards, and also accentuate sections and changes in the music, like the beginnings of choruses or bridge, or the ending of a song. Then we also want to think rhythmically. So we're going to have something like our bass, which will be more simple and have a little more space in it. Similar to a drum set, bass and snare. Then filling in eighth notes or 16th notes in some sort of rhythm pattern in our other percussion voices. And making sure that we don't add too many voices playing the same rhythm that are also similarly pitched. Unless you want to create a special effect, like having two triangles, for example, of slightly different pitch, playing the same pattern, which could be an interesting effect. What I wouldn't do is have shaker and cabasa playing the same thing at the same time. Why? Because the sound is very similar and it could be redundant, and it could end up, unless it's exactly together, it could end up adding a little bit of extra noise or extra sounds that are not needed in the music. So the idea here is to add sounds that are going to be unique, add an interesting rhythmic component, and add a sonic texture, something that is interesting to hear, but to also not replicate those sounds too much because they could start to clash. Okay. The main idea with all percussion, only percussion, is that bass, middle sounds, high sounds, and maybe some transition sounds. The same principles apply when you're playing or adding percussion to a drum set, so adding to a band or playing with a drummer. The thing you have to remember is that you don't need to replicate what the drummer is doing. So, if I was going to play cajon with a drummer or djembe with a drummer, I would probably not play exactly what the drummer's playing on the bass and snare, but I would choose to play something else that would be complementary, probably filling in the spaces that the drummer is leaving open. So I have an example in the pop percussion recordings and videos that you have of where I'm playing bongos, which is similar to cajon or djembe in as much as it has some lower and higher notes. But I'm taking more of a complementary role. I'm not emulating the drum set, but I'm filling in. So I'm going to play a sample, and then later you can watch the whole thing, but here's a sample, and listen to the bongo part and see how it's filling in between what the bass and snare are doing. Similarly, I don't want to play exactly what the drummer's playing on the hi-hat or ride cymbal, so I might play triangle or cabasa or tambourine, but I might leave a little more space in my playing and tune into perhaps some of the things that are happening in the rhythm guitar or the keyboard or other instruments, and bring those parts out or support other rhythmic elements besides playing what the drummer's playing. So as a percussionist, I would say that I would choose sounds that are not already existing in the arrangement. So I might play the middle voices, the middle voice instruments, instead of the low and high drum sounds. I would look for my own sonic space, my own pitch range. I would also play a little more sparsely, with a little more space in my playing, and focus more on accentuating some of the subtle rhythms that are existing in the other instruments, not just playing constant eighth notes or constant 16th notes. If I am playing constant 16ths or 8ths, then I want to do something a little different than what the drummer's doing. So I could still be playing a pattern, but my accents might be more syncopated or offbeat than the drum set. Here's an example of how I would add tambourine and shaker to a song with a drummer, and you also have this recording. It's one of your pop music recordings and videos. So your homework at this point is to make sure you're familiar with the qualities of all of our introductory percussion instruments: djembe, cajon, shaker, cabasa, triangle, and tambourine. Make sure you're able to play basic sounds and grooves on each one of these instruments. Make sure you watch the instructional videos, and you might want to watch it with your students as you help them learn how to hold and play these instruments. Once you can do that, approach a song with the idea of creating your own percussion arrangement. You might want to start with a song that has a drum set, but nothing else. Drums, guitar, bass, keyboards, and a singer, for example, like I did with the pop percussion videos that I've provided you with. Then focus on the smaller instruments and add them to the song. Once you can do that, find a song with a guitar player and a singer, for example, maybe a singer-songwriter kind of song that doesn't have a drum set. It's focused mainly on guitar, maybe bass or piano, and a singer, and add percussion to that song, like I did with the play-along videos, and we'll provide you with a couple other examples of that. So you can do your own percussion-only arrangement. Keep in mind the basic principles. You want to think about pitch in selecting your instruments, something low, something in the middle, something at the upper end. And then you want to think about rhythmic components. If you're percussion only, your rhythms can be more steady, a little more complex, and more grounding. If you're accompanying a song with a drum set, you want to listen to what the drummer's doing and not replicate that exactly, but do something complementary. You also want to listen to the other instruments like rhythm guitar, keyboards, or any other instruments and connect with those with the percussion instruments, playing a little more sparse with a little more space than if you were playing without a drum set. Finally, you could reserve a couple of your instruments, maybe 1 out of 4, for special effects, special moments like accents and transitions. So not every instrument is playing all the time. Finally, remember that you can use each instrument in different ways. So like I do in the play-along videos and the pop percussion videos, I might start off with tambourine as an accent instrument, and then in the chorus of the song go to a rhythm, and then for the verse go back to accents. Maybe in the bridge, I'll use the tambourine as a transition or sound effect instrument. So in your arrangement, you can also use these instruments like I talked about in the last lesson, which was grooves, accents, and transitions. If you haven't watched that lesson, make sure you go back and look at that one before you start doing your own percussion arrangements. All right, I can't wait to see what you all come up with as you help your students learn about this amazing world of hand percussion. We'll be giving you more resources in the future. I'm Kalani. This is World Drum Club. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in a future lesson.